we'll fix it. Okay, so let's go to the main code here. The function that we're calling is called price, which is in basket, and our basket is an instance of shopping basket with box. So we're going to shopping basket with box. We find the price function, which is here. As we can see, this is not a code that's following TDD or any of the other principles that we taught you. This is not something that matters to us right now. Our purpose is to debug this code, however horrible it may be. So let's start with having a breakpoint here, with the first line that we have in the method, and try to run the test again. What is this representing? So when you have a breakpoint, wherever your code stops, it shows you the values for your variables. So here you have shopping basket, which is this variable here. And so you can either see the values from here, from this side, or IntelliJ shows it to you right in front of the code. This is not a comment. This is in your debug mode. It tells you what are the values of your variables. So technically, the way that this is represented is you have 5 different books. So your indexes would be from 0 to 4. What this says is that from book 1 with index 0, because the index starts from 0, you have 1 book of the first one, you have 1 of the second one, and 1 of the third one. So you have book 1, 2, and 3. Now, let's go to next step. So you go to the next line. So the next line, it says if your shopping basket is equal to null, which isn't. We have a value which is 111 in our shopping basket. So we go to the next line. It says if the length of your shopping basket is 1, which again is not the case because the length is 3. Next line. So here it says for book in your shopping basket, count of books for that book would be +1. Technically, what it does, again, like it really isn't a good example of coding, but we want to understand what's happening here. So this is your value. So your shopping basket is 1, 1, 1. The count of books is 3 here. So you have 4 books, you have 5 books, and you have the second one, you have 3 of the second one. That actually shouldn't be like that. So this probably is one of the bugs. But let's keep going and find out what the problem is. So we have a new variable called max count, and now we have a for loop which is supposed to tell you what is the maximum number of each book. It's not the combination of all the books you have. So for example, if you have like 1 of the first book, like 3 of the second book, and 2 of the third book, your max count would be 3 because that would be the maximum number of one book that you have. All right, so max count is 3. Now, we have another array that we're calling array matrix. And so what it's doing is technically it's having like 5 rows, and for each of the rows it wants to tell you how many books of that one book title you have. So it would be easier when we actually come out of this for loop. So what I'm doing here is I'm just going line by line, and by each click it's updating the values of my variables based on whatever is happening in this for loop. Okay, so now let's look at the values in the variables. So the shopping basket is the value that our test case passed. It's still the same thing. The count of books array, it's telling you that you have 0 of the first book, 3 of the second book, 0 of the third book, 0 of the fourth book, and 0 of the fifth book. Your max count is 3. Because of all the books, you have book 2, and you have 3 of that book. So 3 is the most number of books that you have in your count of books array. So what's happening here is that, again, you have representatives for each of the 5 books that you have, and you are selecting 3 books. At this point, you don't care what book it is, it's just 3 books. So your first choice, it's not the first book, it's the second book, and it's not any of those of the rest of the books. The same here. Your second choice is not the first book. It tells you that this is 1. -1 means that you haven't chosen that. 1 means that this is the book that you chose. And so obviously the rest of them would be -1. And also the third book that you pick is also the second book. What it's trying to do, it's telling you that you had 3 picks. So you went to the bookstore, you picked 3 books, right? All the options that you had was like Harry Potter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what you did with your 3 picks, all of those 3 were book number 2. Yeah. And this is 1 is because the index starts from 0. So the purpose of this demo is debugging. So we're not going to fix the code. We just want to understand what's happening and why something goes wrong, and then just fix that part. Otherwise, especially with this code, if you want to fix it, we have to rewrite a big part of that code. So, I mean, like whatever the logic is, as long as it works, we're fine with it. We just want to find the problems that causes it to not work as expected. So what we're checking in this if is if column index is less than next column index. It's telling you next column index is 2, and column index here is 0. So this is true. We go inside this if, and so in your array matrix here, with your row index, which is 0, plus 1, with your row index 1, and your column index plus 1, so your column index is 0, so it would be 1. So you want to look at array matrix 0, 1. Here's your array matrix. This is 0, and this is 1. So this is -1. So it says if this is greater than 0, you add 1 to the sum of the next column. So what it's technically doing is if you pick that book, so if it's 1, which is greater than 0, it means that you picked that book. If it's -1, it means that you haven't. So if you have chosen that book, you go and add 1 to the sum of that next column. And the same thing for the rest of the books. So okay, so we ended up getting to this line. Our total sum was 24. So it's returning 24. Again, like this code has a lot of problems. I mean, it works, but in terms of clean code, following all the TDD principles, it's not the best example. But I wanted to have something that is a response to that kata, so you can try it for yourself and then also try to debug this to compare your code with this one. So what happened here, I ran this test, 3 of the same book, and what we expected was 8 times 3, because the price of each book is 8, and we are buying 3 books, which are the same book. So they won't have any discounts, because you only get discounts if you buy a series of books, not the same book multiple times. So you expect 24, and what your function is returning is also 24. So this test passes. So if I go here, this should get to this part, and yeah, so we're done. The problem was with this test case, with 3 different books. So let's try debugging this. Okay. All right, so we're back to our main code. The first line, we have our shopping basket. So here, what it means is that your first choice was book 1, your second choice was book 3, and your third choice was book 5. So now you have 3 different books.